What was I feeling in this moment? Rage. I screamed out loud. Mind you, this all happened within a matter of 2 minutes. It was 7:15 now, and I walked over to my kitchen. My boyfriend was enjoying some coffee and reading a book. At peace. I burst out crying, threw my phone on the table, the whole works. In this moment, I was sure the world was against me. And by world, I mean the German government. Howdy und servus, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of The Pod Abroad. My name is Paulina de los Santos, and for some context, I'm an American who has been living in Munich, Germany, the last 9 years. I initially came for a master's program at the Technical University in sustainability, and then I liked it so much that I stayed. I got a full-time job, and the rest is history. So was initially here in 2016. And here we are today. On this podcast, I share my experience as an American living abroad here in Munich. And I also have conversations with my friends to share their stories and their lived experiences about living in Germany as well. So I have several other episodes if you're interested in catching up on some, getting to know these incredible people and the life that they have here in Germany. Today, I want to speak all about the Chancellor Friedrich Merz's comment on Stadtbild. And what is Stadtbild, you may ask? That is a German word, of course, that translates to cityscape, otherwise known in English as how a city appears, the optics of it. And 2 weeks ago, the German Chancellor made a comment on the Stadtbild. And just for an English translation, it came out to saying, on migration, we're very far. In this federal government, we have reduced the numbers from August 24 to August 25 by 60%, but we, of course, still have this problem in the cityscape. And that's why the federal interior minister is also now involved in enabling and carrying out returns, deportations, on a very large scale. So this comment itself had a lot of backlash online, I think rightfully so. On my TikTok feed, it's very political. I'm definitely someone who stays up to date with politics, whether that's unfortunately with my home country or here where I am living in Germany. People were mad about it. There were protests also in Berlin, which led to a follow-up from Merz saying then, I have nothing to take back. If you ask your daughters, you would probably get quite clear and definite answer as to what I meant with my regards. Migration remains necessary and enriching. What I see as problems are people without a right of residence and without work. Obviously, I personally think that the last little touch on that was trying to play on both sides, saying, yes, migration is necessary, but that's where the problem lies. The question about, ask your daughters, ask them what? Is this all insinuating that migrants of color are, and the optics of a city are causing more problems, insinuating more crime, and particularly singling out migrants of color? I think that's kind of the bottom line of what people took from it. And the comment itself saying Stadtbild is racist. And it's unfortunate. And it's really sad, actually, when I'm following the German political scape, especially in 2025 this year, honestly, as an American, I feel like it's disappointing and disheartening. From many Germans, of course, that I've spoken to, they're like, oh, this is like how it's kind of always been, but it's escalating and it's becoming now ever more present. Maybe it was a little hush-hush racism on a larger scale in that sense the last several years. But it's becoming more and more present. And I see so many similarities, unfortunately, with how can I say this politically correct? The the ever evolving political landscape of the United States right now. Um, Unfortunately, the AfD party, which is the extreme right party in Germany, got a significant amount of votes this year. I even saw in my neighborhood here in Munich, teenage boys, like they must have been 18, 19 years old, putting up posters really enthusiastically all over. And this is just a very, very extreme party, y'all. For anyone who doesn't know German politics, like I saw posters also this year in Munich where they hired someone to appear to be a predatory drag queen. And in this graphic on the poster, they put like a photo of a scared child at the bottom. Um, and they were basically like just, I mean, perpetuating false narratives. That's what it is. And that is what Merz's quote is also doing. It's unfortunate, and it's something that has rightfully upset a lot of people, but I am proud for everyone who has kind of gone online and said something about that and spoken about where they stand. So in general, like I said, in 2025, Germany feels more and more a bit like the US, a bit polarized and framing immigrants as problems. No place is perfect, obviously. Munich and Germany are both flawed, complicated, and that will always remain. I know I have said a lot of beautiful things about this city. I think the beauty of being here as long as I have is the ability to productively criticize, of course, based on my personal experience. And I think that's important and something that I have actually always admired about Germans. Because quite often when I've said positive things about the healthcare system here in Germany or day-to-day life or whatever it may be, I've always had Germans in kind of the corner of my ear saying, yeah, but it could be better, but it could be this. And I think that's very admirable about Germans that they feel so confident to criticize their systems, and they want more from their country. Whereas I feel like in the US, I mean, luckily not now, I guess more and more people with the No Kings protest that just happened, and the state of our political environment right now and the divisiveness, more and more people are, of course, being loud and voicing their opinion. And I think that's also very important. But I think in the US growing up, I've always kind of had this notion of when you criticize the US, you're not a patriot, which is insane. I think criticism and patriotism go hand in hand in wanting the best from your homeland. So I wanted to start off with a little excerpt of a story that I had written 2 years ago in November 2023. I'll link it down below if you want to read the full story. But a bit of it was speaking about my experience then with my visa. I've lived here 9 years in Germany, and I initially came to Germany on a student visa, then was offered a full-time position. So I switched to an EU blue card. And then I think about 2 years ago now, I have been on permanent residency. And the day I got my permanent residency, I was over the moon. It felt like the war of my life with the administration here was over. Okay, I don't want to actually like kind of make that comedic, but in a very serious way, I've dealt with the bureaucracy here just like many other immigrants have in this country, and it's not black and white. It's not simple. The waiting times are absolutely insane. The anxiety that one has when you've done everything right, all that you can, and yet it's still not enough is outraging and frustrating. So here's that little excerpt from 2 years ago. On Tuesday, I woke up at 6 a.m. to try to make an emergency appointment at the KVR, the German Foreigners Office, because my visa was expired. They only opened up appointments on their system online the day of. And for some context, y'all, I had already reapplied on time for a visa renewal and was with an expired visa because the office had never responded to me and were taking way too long. So they only open up appointments on their system online the day of. Their website reads, "No free appointment, check back during the day." So with my eyes half open in the dark at 6 a.m., I start refreshing the appointments page. There was an annoying CAPTCHA code needed every time. I refreshed every single minute until 73 minutes later when it was 7:13. There I saw it. 10 slots open up for the day. I quickly hit the first time slot. It asked me for my name and email. I entered the details, hit submit, and then got a "sorry, this appointment is taken" message. It's okay, there were plenty of others. I refreshed the page, entered the CAPTCHA. This time, I clicked the last appointment of the day. Entered my name and email, hit submit, "sorry, this appointment is taken." Refreshed the page, entered the CAPTCHA, clicked on the appointment, put in my name and email, hit submit, "sorry, the appointment is taken." It's my fourth time now, and I'm refreshing the page. I entered the CAPTCHA. This time, there were no more appointments available for the day. What was I feeling in this moment? Rage. I screamed out loud. Mind you, this all happened within a matter of 2 minutes. It was 7:15 now, and I walked over to my kitchen. My boyfriend was enjoying some coffee and reading a book. At peace. I burst out crying, threw my phone on the table, the whole works. In this moment, I was sure the world was against me. And by world, I mean the German government. I remember saying something like, "What am I supposed to do? I can't do this all over again tomorrow," in reference to my emotions. I did everything I was supposed to do this morning. I applied for my visa renewal with a proper amount of time before it had expired. I played by the rules. All I want to do is see my family. It fucking sucks being a foreigner in this country. Why do they make it like the fucking Hunger Games? I went back to our bedroom where I had previously spent the hour and 13 minutes refreshing, and I cried uncontrollably. Long story short, I left at 8 a.m. to a doctor's appointment. Somehow in the chaos of this week, I had 2 different appointments to get vaccines for an upcoming trip. Tim, who's my partner, then called the KVR on my behalf, and within minutes, he sent me a message saying, "Hey, you can go pick up your temporary visa after your appointment." How could it have been that simple? Here's the message I wrote him. I almost feel silly for crying. I was crying as if someone had died. I don't think I've felt that hurt or in pain in general in a long, long time. It really felt so incredibly heavy that the only way I could let the pain out was through freaking weeping. But I think it was a built-up frustration of being in a foreign country and needing to go through bureaucracy instead of just being able to go to places freely. I'm sorry if I worried you this morning and for slamming my phone in frustration. At the same time, I think my body needed a good-ass cry. Thank you for your support and for calling. It really, really means a lot to me. And then I wrote, "Turns out this bad bitch is sometimes fragile." To which he responded, "No worries, babe. I understand your frustrations. It's easier to solve problems with a cool head. That's why it helps being a team." My heart is fluttering as I recall this. I'm so grateful for his love and support. So there was my little excerpt in that story. And looking back, I remember also people are going to be like, "Well, you should have called in the first place." On their website at the time, it said in red and in bold, "Do not call. Do not call. We will deny it. Like, you're not going to get any support, blah, blah, blah. Only send an email for emergencies." Had done all that. I had tried to get that appointment. So of course, like me being a naive immigrant, in a same sense, actually wanting to respect the German culture and following rules, when my boyfriend Tim said like, "Oh, I'll try to call them," I said, look here. And I had my laptop open. It says, "Do not call." he didn't take no for an answer and did so anyway. And I'm so, so grateful for him. So that was 2 years ago, trying to simply get an emergency visa so I could go on a flight that week to visit my family, to see my 94-year-old grandfather in Texas, to see my brothers and my father. And it was hard. It was like, I think more so than that moment itself, like I had written, it was a culmination of, doing the right thing and it not being enough, and frustration built up. But my story is not unique. I know that. This is a story of probably every immigrant that goes through being here in Germany the right way. The offices here, y'all, are overworked, understaffed, and quite frankly, here in Munich, I think that's also a political decision. I have had an application open for citizenship since July 2024. Here in Munich, they said it would be an 18-month wait, meaning I should hear back by the end of this year. Still haven't heard anything. Still kind of crossing my fingers, hoping that happens. Meanwhile, in Berlin, I think there's a 4-month wait. And I know of others in small cities outside of Munich who have had 3-month waits. Of course, Munich is a big city. On a side note, employees at our Munich foreigner office have been caught this year taking bribes and pushing people's applications forward, which is a whole other story. And their bribes were actually really small. I was joking with my friend saying that's crazy. Y'all are willing to risk it all for €100 per application. That's wild. That's really wild. All of this to say is that being an immigrant in this country isn't easy. It's not black and white. And we all go through our personal struggles. Not everybody speaks about it. I've said a lot of positive things about life here in Germany, but there is shitty days, of course. There is a lot of frustration that comes with being an immigrant. Obviously, it's a life that I actively choose. I want to be here. I deeply love Munich and love everything that this country has offered me. But there are those hard moments for sure. All that being said as well, I do feel very privileged to kind of have an advocate with my boyfriend now. We have been together 4 years. I've lived in Germany for 9. So I didn't move here for him. We just met during COVID as well. So I know what it's like to also be in this country and not have an advocate for you. But for every German that's come across my path and been able to help me along the way, I'm so incredibly grateful. My friends and I kind of often joke saying oh, with our partners, they're kind of the token white German, in acknowledging that privilege that we're kind of taking advantage of. Because you are privileged if you are a white German man in this country advocating for your partner that is not getting the appropriate support in several situations. So as unjust as that may be, it's important to call out privilege where it exists in general. Just a couple of comments on racism and belonging kind of in a daily life here in Munich. I've had some comments before and some people asked me how is racism in Germany? To which I respond, maybe you can speak to people of color. I know I am someone who is white passing, so my experience as an immigrant in this country is not the same as people of color, as my friend Mo and Dio from Nigeria, for example. I'm sure they have a lot to say about things that they've experienced that I have never gone through. And I think their stories also matter. If you want to hear Mo's story, I can link it right here. We had a great episode together and her story should definitely be heard as well. But even as someone who is white passing, Um, I would say I have heard backhanded comments over the years for sure. And the really unfortunate and uncomfortable part about that is that I've had people complain about immigrants to me, um, even though I myself am an immigrant, but they kind of look at me like, oh, but not you. And I think that's a little nuts. When I first moved, actually the first 2 years of being in Germany, I lived in Freising, which is right outside of Munich, where I studied as well. And when I was moving to my first little apartment here in Munich, I told everybody at work at the time, like, oh, I'm moving into a neighborhood in the north called Hasenbergl, to which multiple people, like at least 2 to 3 people, on different occasions responded like, oh, like that place is not safe. That neighborhood, it's like full of immigrants. And I always find it so odd. I'm like, y'all are like, no, this is not a safe space for that kind of talk. Like, I hope you know, like, I am an immigrant. And I would say, like, oh, I am an immigrant. Um, and then they'd kind of hit me with that, like, oh, but not you. Which is very, very loud racism, in my view, and just not cool at all. Luckily, these weren't people who I was particularly close with, but that was just one time. Another time, very, very recently, actually, I think it was maybe 2 months ago this past summer, I went to a doctor here in Munich for the first time. And he, I don't know what compelled him to, but he started just laying down like all his anger with immigrants in this country. He knew I was from the US. He had lived in the US many years as well, and like loved to reminisce on his US times there, and I guess thought I was a safe person to just bitch about issues with immigrants here, particularly in Munich. Um and I found that so odd. He said like, "Oh, it's because of all these immigrants that I can't find a place to live," which on one hand, of course, like one can understand the frustration. On the other hand, like, hold your city accountable and your elected officials accountable as well. They're the ones making these decisions and letting immigrants into Munich, also not with the proper resources. Also, like, many immigrants probably aren't stealing your home, sir, as someone who's earning as a successful doctor here in the city. So, just another comment, but I do hear backhanded comments about immigrants every now and then in this city, and it's unfortunate. Um, Obviously, the topic of immigration is not black and white. It is something very, very complex. And even hearing the story from my friend Ali, who was a Iranian refugee and came to Germany when he was 5 years old. I'll link the episode right here. Hearing his story, one understands how the immigration system here in Germany is extremely flawed, how it was extremely flawed back in the 90s, and how it still is today. I also know someone who told me about several issues, like who works here in Munich with a job related to supporting refugees. And there are so many issues when it comes to the actual system itself. Of course, it's one thing for Germany to have good PR and to say like, we want to open you with welcome arms, and then people get here and they don't have the proper housing amenities and visas to work. People want to be working, but when you don't have the legal right to, that's a whole other level of complexity. What do you expect them to be doing all day? That's also a serious issue. So like I said, I know that immigration itself is not all rainbows and sunshine and something that's going flawlessly. Obviously, there is so much that needs to be done. Nevertheless, the comment from Merz is something that's striking and telling. At the end of the day, he is a politician, and people, my German friends and people here, have said that he has to appeal to the AfD probably for votes. It's It's unfortunate, right? But I guess Germany in 2025 is pulling more and more to that narrative of, yeah, questioning diversity, questioning how cities look. And that's just, yeah, like I said, disheartening. I wanted to mention that I personally have had so many positive experiences with immigrants here in Munich, immigrants of color as well here in Munich, and also reflect on my first week here in the country. I was an ignorant American. I am an ignorant American, and I try every single day to be less and less ignorant and to listen to others and understand systems and concepts more and more. But when I came to Germany, it was my first week in this country, and I had moved here with a commitment of 2 years for a master's program. I had never stepped foot in this country, not a single day in my life. And ignorantly, I assumed that Germany was just full of white people, which, of course, numerically probably, but the cities as well. I think I ignorantly assumed that Munich was just all white people. Mind you, this is coming from a 21-year-old Paulina who had never stepped foot in this country before, and had only heard certain things about Germans. So I probably had that in my head. And I remember my first week arriving here, that just being completely, that myth being dispelled, and that being not the case. Yeah. And just being pleasantly surprised with the diversity of cultures here within this eclectic city. And this past week, I was scrolling on TikTok and I saw a politician here in Munich also comment on Merz's comment, and saying that Munich stands by diversity, and that Munich actually is comprised of citizens that have, not citizens, inhabitants that have 50%. Let me backtrack. This politician said that half of Munich does not have a German passport. And I thought that was very, very telling. And I think that immigrants make Munich what it is. They enrich this city. And I've had so many beautiful experiences with immigrants. I'm trying to think of like particular ones. Every time I go to Sababa, which is my favorite falafel place in Viktualienmarkt, the men that are working there are so incredibly kind and warm. And quite honestly, if I really want to be truthful, it's oftentimes that immigrant strangers here in the city show me the most warmth, show me the most receptiveness, and are like the kindest to me. On one hand, that could be because we're kind of on the same boat in a way of being Ausländer, foreigners here in this country. On another hand, I just think that there are so many other cultures that are 10 times warmer than people here in Munich. I guess it's not that hard. Unfortunately, the bar is kind of low. But I think many people can back me up in saying that a lot of interactions with foreigners are generally beautiful and positive. And I also want to make a very strong point here and say that an immigrant's worth is not defined by their title and career path. And I think that's very, very important, because when we see people also defending immigrants online, I think it's not enough to only say like, oh, well, immigrants become doctors and lawyers and XYZ and healthcare workers. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And that's the truth, of course. I mean, the medical field here in Germany is also heavily reliant on immigrants, and to become a doctor, lawyer, or engineer is an absolute accomplishment. Two things can be right at the same time, but not being someone of that title is also valid and okay, and you still have the same worth as a human. I don't think that we should be saying that to be a respected immigrant in this country that you need to amount to something like that. Just wanted to say that that immigrants here who follow other paths for work are also should also be respected in the same way that people with higher education or how people with higher education are respected. So that's very, very important to me. But yes, all in all, I think I just wanted to come out here today and say that I stand with immigrants. I stand with diversity. And I think that anyone listening to my podcast should always know that and know where I stand. I will always stand with the immigrants. And although the topic of immigration is deeply complex, I think it's not that complex to say that diversity enriches German cities. And that the government has a lot of work to do if they want to have a solid system. Accepting people and then not supporting them is also not a massive success. Yeah, when you cannot support these humans and see them as equals to others. I think we need to remember that immigrants are humans. I think it's very, very easy in this polarized political environment right now to dehumanize. We've seen that quite often in the US this past year with the word illegal alien instead of a person who's undocumented. And yeah, I don't think immigrant is a bad word either. I know there's a lot of discourse around saying immigrant and expat, and just some clarification like on it, if I've ever used that like hashtag or phrasing in my descriptions or on social media, it's merely to get reach with search engine optimization, y'all. I am proudly an immigrant here in Germany, and I do not think that the word immigrant is something to be ashamed of. So all in all, when I walk through Munich, I don't see a problem. Matt said, ask your daughters. I am a daughter as well. I see friends like my friend Mo, who lived here from Nigeria, or my friend Ali, who is here as a refugee from Iran. People who are just the best people I know, y'all, enriching this city, who might necessarily never feel German. And that's unfortunate, but that's a bit of life in Germany as an immigrant. One last little, I guess, cultural difference that I wanna make a point of is that I know right now in the US, seeing the discourse of the Republican Party speaking against immigrants and dehumanizing them is loud and taking up a lot of space. But on the other hand, the true feelings and lived experiences of a lot of Americans as immigrants in the US are also ones of pride. Maybe not in 2025, y'all, but for example, my grandma was someone always who her whole life was extremely proud to be an American, even though she wasn't born in the country. And I think as a generalization that when one becomes American, like gets an American passport, that they have that sense of pride and belonging in the US. I mean, obviously to a certain extent with our current environment, but you are American when you get your citizenship. But when you get a German citizenship, I wouldn't just say like, I'm German. I've actually like joked and said like, oh, I applied to become German instead of like I applied for my German citizenship. And people laugh because one doesn't simply just feel German even when they have these documents. And I think that's like a big cultural difference, is that even when people have German passports here in Germany, have immigrated, have been here a majority of their life, sometimes they will never feel German. I'm taken back to a few weeks ago at Oktoberfest. I was there with my friend Ali, and I was like, oh yeah, he's like German. And Ali looks at me like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Like, you've been here since you were 5, like you speak the language. And he just looked at me like, no, he doesn't feel that way. There's just an example of a big cultural difference. And I've often also told myself, like, one day when I have German citizenship, like, will I wake up one day and feel like I truly belong? I may never feel that way, but I've kind of come to terms with that cultural difference and like made my peace that even when I master the language and when I've worked X amount of years and when I've whatever contributed all of this to my community, like I don't know if there'll ever be a point that I feel German, and for me that's okay. Yeah. So anyway, if you've reached this point, thank you so much for listening in. What do you guys think? What do you think of Miatz's comment? Do you think it's racist? Do you think that he actually meant something else, like he was saying and trying to kind of clean it up? I'd be so curious to know what you guys think as immigrants in this country, or as Germans, or even as Americans from my home country, hearing about the polarizing environment here in Germany. But yes, thanks a lot for listening in, and until next time. The Pod Abroad's video, audio, and music is produced and edited by Tim Teherne. Make sure to give us a follow and leave a comment if you like this episode.